The wind rattled the windowpane like fingernails on glass. Outside, the streetlights flickered, one by one, casting long, trembling shadows across the empty snow. Marcus hugged his coat tighter, listening. It wasn't the cold that made him shiver. It was the sound. A faint creak, somewhere upstairs. His apartment was small, 2 rooms and a kitchenette, and he lived alone. The building groaned in the winter wind, yes, but this felt different. Closer. Human, almost. He froze. Footsteps? No. A whisper. The word was barely audible, like someone was trying not to be heard. He pressed his ear to the floor, heart hammering. Hello. His voice sounded foreign in the hollow room. Silence answered him. A single ornament on the tiny, dusty Christmas tree twitched as if someone brushed past it. Marcus blinked. Snow drifted outside, silent and steady, but inside, the air had changed. Thick, heavy, expectant. He should have called someone. Called anyone. But the phone was in the kitchen, across the room. And moving toward it meant crossing the floor where something waited. A shadow shifted in the corner of his eye. Not his own. Not fully. And then, just as he turned, a cold breath brushed the back of his neck. Why are you here? Marcus didn't move for a long moment, just stood frozen, the cold breath lingering on the back of his neck. The apartment felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing inward. The Christmas lights on his tiny tree blinked unevenly. One yellow bulb dimming as if exhausted. He told himself it was the wind, the draft under the door, but the whisper lingered, scratching at the edges of his mind. He stepped forward, each footfall measured, deliberate. The old floorboards groaned under his weight. Upstairs, the apartment above was silent. Too silent. He'd lived in this building for 3 years and never heard a whisper, never a shadow that moved against the light. Tonight was different. Tonight, the loneliness wasn't just a feeling. It had form and it was watching him. The kettle whistled in the kitchenette. Marcus jumped, flinching as if the sound had come from inside his chest. He filled a mug with steaming water, the warmth barely touching the chill that had settled deep in his bones. Outside, snow continued to fall, muffling the world, turning the city into a silent white tomb. He tried to shake off the unease. It's just me, he whispered, more to convince himself than to speak aloud. But the words felt hollow. Even in the quiet, the apartment seemed alive, breathing in rhythm with him, waiting for him to slip. He remembered the Christmases before. Family dinners, laughter spilling over with clinking glasses, the smell of roasted chicken and cinnamon. Those memories felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. This was different. Alone. Completely alone. And yet, he wasn't. A soft tap, like fingernails drumming on the wall behind him. Marcus froze. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the corners of the room. Nothing. Only the tree, the couch, the muted glow of the TV left on from earlier. The whisper came again, closer this time, a syllable he couldn't understand, a sound that seemed to crawl along his skin. He grabbed his coat, the one his mother had given him years ago, threadbare and stiff, and moved toward the door. Hello. His voice shook. Is someone there? Silence. The shadow in the corner shifted again, faster this time. He didn't recognize it as anything natural. Something human-shaped but wrong. Too thin, too tall. And then, almost imperceptibly, it smiled. Marcus stumbled back, heart hammering. He backed toward the kitchenette, hands clenching the edge of the counter. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. His mind raced. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Maybe the isolation had twisted his senses. Maybe. And yet, the apartment had never felt so unwelcoming. The walls groaned in sympathy, the lights flickered like a warning, and the air grew colder. He pressed his back against the counter, trying to steady his breath. Why are you here? The whisper returned, unmistakable now, low and deliberate, as if right behind him. Marcus spun, eyes wide. No one. Just the empty room. The kettle hissed, steam curling into the dim light. A single ornament quivered again. He had never been superstitious, never believed in ghosts, but tonight, his mind betrayed him. There was something here. Something that had waited. He tried the phone. Dead. No dial tone, just static and a faint echo of the whisper. Panic clawed at him. He considered leaving, running into the snow, the freezing streets, but the thought of stepping outside felt wrong. Like the city itself had vanished and only the apartment remained. Alone. Watching. Waiting. Marcus sank onto the couch, hugging his knees. He closed his eyes, willing the shadows to recede, willing the whispers to end. But the silence was a lie. Beneath it, he could hear the building itself breathing, sighing, carrying secrets in the cracks of the floor, the gaps in the walls. Minutes passed, or hours. Time had lost meaning. He felt the presence of something just beyond his vision, circling him, patient. And then a voice, faint but distinct, almost a hiss. "You shouldn't have come back." He froze again, heart in his throat. I live here," he stammered. A pause. And then a whisper, so close it felt like it crawled into his ear. "Not anymore." The room seemed to tilt. The tree swayed, though no breeze stirred. The lights flickered violently. Marcus's breath came in shallow gasps. He wanted to convince himself this was a dream, a hallucination born from loneliness. But the eyes, those eyes in the corner, watching, waiting, told him otherwise. He didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every creak, every shadow, every fleeting whisper reminded him that he was no longer just alone. He was observed, hunted, a guest in a place that didn't belong to him anymore. And as dawn's pale light pressed against the windows, he realized the truth. The solitude he thought he craved had brought him something far worse. And it was only beginning. Marcus spent the next days in a fog of unease, each hour blurring into the next. He avoided the windows, yet could feel the snow's pale light creeping through the blinds, casting shifting patterns on the walls. He started noticing small changes, things out of place, objects slightly moved, shadows that didn't belong to any light source. A cup from the counter would appear on the floor beside the fridge. A chair he hadn't touched now leaned at an impossible angle. He tried to rationalize. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, seasonal depression, logical explanations for illogical experiences. And yet, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The air in the apartment seemed to thicken when he entered a room, and the shadows lingered longer than they should. Then the whispers began. At first, just soft syllables he couldn't understand, a murmur threading through the stillness of his nights. Then words, deliberate and chilling, murmured from corners, under the floor, inside the walls. "Go. Leave. You shouldn't be here." Marcus told himself it was his imagination, but the voice sometimes replied to his muttered protests. "I live here," he whispered one night, voice trembling. "Not anymore," it hissed just beneath his ear. The apartment's other tenants began to notice something was wrong. Mrs. Hargrove, the elderly woman on the second floor, knocked at his door one evening. "You've been in here all day," she said, eyes narrowing. "I hear things. Strange things. Footsteps, whispers." Marcus forced a laugh, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. "It's just the building settling," he said. But the old woman didn't believe him. "Don't be alone at night," she said softly, almost pleading, before retreating down the hallway. That night, Marcus awoke to a cold draft and the unmistakable sensation of being touched. Not a tap on the shoulder, but the pressure of something heavy brushing against his back. He froze, eyes wide in the dark, but saw nothing. Only the dim glow of the tree, one ornament swinging slowly as if something had leaned on it. Flashbacks began to creep in, unbidden. Childhood Christmases spent alone while his parents worked double shifts. Small apartments that smelled of dust and loneliness. Streets silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Memories he had suppressed now twisted into a warning, as if the very pattern of his solitude had attracted something malevolent. He started keeping a journal, documenting everything, every sound, every whisper, every impossible shadow. The writing didn't calm him. The words seemed to echo, as if someone or something read them aloud in the spaces between the lines. One night, in the dead hours, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Not the usual groan of the old building, but measured, heavy steps descending toward his door. He clutched a knife from the kitchen, his breath short, body pressed against the wall. A shadow pooled under the door, shifting, expanding. The knob rattled. "Who's there?" Marcus called, voice high, desperate. Silence, then a whisper so close it felt like ice sliding across his ear. "You can't hide." He fled into the living room, crouching behind the couch. The shadows gathered, thickening as though drawn to his fear. The Christmas lights blinked violently, and in the flicker, he thought he saw a figure. A tall, thin silhouette with limbs too long, stretching impossibly, a face obscured by darkness, but eyes that reflected every secret dread he had ever felt. Sleep became impossible. Meals went cold on the counter. Work emails went unanswered. Marcus' mind frayed under the relentless pressure of the unseen. Every phone call he tried ended in static. Every door creaked open despite being locked. Even the mailman avoided his floor, leaving letters in the lobby instead of slipping them under the door. Then the neighbors began to whisper. Not to him directly, but in the hallways, voices trailing when he passed. "Did you hear him?" One would murmur. "The screams," said another. Marcus pretended not to listen, but the words gnawed at him. He began questioning his sanity, wondering if he was hallucinating, imagining the whispers, the shadows, the weight that pressed at the back of his neck when no one was there. Yet undeniable signs persisted. One night, he found the Christmas tree toppled over. The ornaments shattered, but the broken pieces were arranged in a circle around the center bulb, a pattern too deliberate to be accidental. His journal lay in the middle, pages spread, words illegible as if someone or something had scanned it, leaving an imprint of its own. Flashbacks returned, sharper now. Marcus remembered a story his grandmother had told him years ago, a spirit of the lonely, a shadow that crept into homes where no warmth of family or friendship remained. Those who spent too many nights alone during Christmas became easy prey, she said. "It's drawn to the emptiness in your soul," she whispered, long ago as Marcus lay in bed, pretending to sleep. At the time, he'd laughed. Now, the laughter felt like a warning he had ignored. Whispers in the apartment grew into sentences, phrases full of malice and intent. "You belong to me now. No one will find you. The snow covers all, but not you." Marcus began seeing shapes in reflective surfaces, a fleeting shadow in the fridge door, a distorted face in the polished counter, fleeting flashes of eyes in the TV screen when it wasn't on. He tried to confront them, reach toward them, speak to them, but they retreated, leaving him grasping at nothing but cold air and his own mounting terror. He attempted to leave, to escape into the frozen streets, but every exit became a maze. Hallways twisted. Doors led him back into the same room. Time warped. Clocks ran backward, then stopped entirely. The city outside seemed distant, unreachable, as if a dome had descended over the apartment, trapping him in a space governed by something else, something ancient, patient, and unrelenting. Then, one evening, he found a note on the counter. Written in a shaky, uneven hand, though not his own, were the words, "You cannot leave. You are already part of it." Fear, pure and suffocating, filled him. He realized the whispers were not random. They were learning, adapting, pressing closer, feeding on his despair. And as he sank to the floor, hiding beneath the couch, the shadows thickened around him, nearly tangible, pressing in from all sides. He screamed once, a raw, terrified sound, but the walls swallowed it. No one answered. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent, indifferent. And then, just before dawn, a whisper directly into his ear, unmistakable and final. "I've been waiting for you." Marcus' breath caught. He dared not move. He dared not blink. Because when he did, the shadows shifted, closer, taller, more defined, and the inevitable truth settled in his bones. The isolation that had once been loneliness was now a predator. He was not alone. Not really. And whatever this was, it had been watching him for far longer than he had known. He realized, with a cold, hollow certainty, that the horror wasn't just in the apartment. It had been in him all along. In his loneliness. In the empty spaces of his life. And now it was awake. The night had fallen long before Marcus realized he had stopped keeping track of time. The apartment had changed again. Shadows pooled thickly in the corners, pressing against the walls as if the room itself were breathing. The Christmas tree, once small and humble, now loomed like a blackened sentinel. Its ornaments glimmered faintly, but in the reflections, Marcus saw more than his own image. Eyes, hundreds of them, wide, empty, watching, blinked in the glass. He tried to flee to the door. Locked. He'd locked it countless times, yet it now stood as if it had never been secured, a yawning invitation. A whisper hissed through the room, low and rasping, yet unmistakably clear. "You can't leave." Marcus gripped the knife from the kitchen, knuckles white, and took a trembling step forward. The floorboards groaned under his weight, each creak an announcement to the entity that hunted him. He could feel it moving, circling, always just out of sight. The apartment seemed to warp. Familiar corners stretched, doors led to walls, ceilings pressed lower. Even the lights flickered violently, casting grotesque, elongated shadows across the walls. Then he heard it. Footsteps, deliberate and heavy, descending from above. Not the faint, random creaks of the building, but a rhythm that matched his heartbeat, syncing with the terror that raced through his veins. He tried to shout, but no sound came. Only the whisper again, curling around his mind. "I've been waiting for you." Marcus spun, knife raised, eyes darting. A figure emerged from the darkness, impossibly tall and thin, limbs stretching like ink across the walls. Its face was obscured by shadow, yet he could feel its gaze piercing him. The air thickened, pressing against his chest, constricting. He staggered backward. Why are you here?" His voice shook, cracking. "Because you were alone," it whispered. The words slithered across the room, curling around his ears, dripping with malice. "And I feed on the lonely." Marcus lunged, knife trembling, swinging blindly. The figure didn't move. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. The blade passed through shadow, meeting nothing but cold air. A laugh, low and hollow, echoed from the corners, filling the apartment with dread. "You thought you could escape?" The voice was behind him now, in his mind, in his chest, in the walls. "This is where you belong." The lights failed entirely, plunging him into absolute darkness. Marcus fell to his knees, clutching his head, teeth chattering. He tried to focus, to see, to find the figure, but it was inside him now, every thought a whisper, every heartbeat a drum of terror. Then came the walls. The living room stretched impossibly. The ceiling vaulted upward, dripping shadows like ink. The floor rippled beneath him as though walking on water. Furniture shifted violently, spinning into grotesque, impossible angles. He screamed. The sound was swallowed, echoed back distorted. He stumbled into the kitchen. The fridge door flew open. Inside, hundreds of tiny faces pressed against the glass, all twisted in silent screams. Eyes black as coal, mouths gaping. Marcus recoiled, vomiting, clutching the edge of the counter. A hand, not his own, emerged from the fridge, icy and skeletal, brushing against his arm. "You're mine now," it whispered. Marcus ran, barely keeping his balance on the warped floor. He slammed into the living room wall. The Christmas tree towered impossibly high, branches twisting toward him like the fingers of a demon. Ornaments swung violently, smashing into the walls. One reflected a face, his own but twisted, eyes wide and hollow, mouth stretched into a silent scream. "This is your gift," the shadow hissed, coiling around him like smoke. "The loneliness you embraced I will claim." He tried the door again. It led nowhere, only a wall of darkness. He banged on it with fists and knife, but the material seemed alive, pulsing with every strike. His breath came in ragged gasps. Sweat mingled with tears as the whispers multiplied, chanting in overlapping tones. "Alone. Alone. Alone." Marcus stumbled back, crashing into the couch. It stretched into an impossible pit, swallowing him almost whole. The floor beneath him became slick, shadowy liquid that tried to pull him down. He clawed at it, screaming, but the apartment itself fought him, bending, warping, reshaping. He remembered the stories. Grandmother's warnings about the lonely, the shadows that fed on isolation. He had laughed at them once, but now the truth burned inside him. His solitude had been an invitation. Every night alone, every forgotten Christmas, every moment of quiet despair had called it here. And now it had him. "Why are you doing this?" he rasped, voice broken. "Because you waited for me," it replied, and the shadows coiled around him, pressing into his chest. The knife slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. He kicked, tried to run, but the walls bent, closing the space around him. The ceiling lowered, shadows dripping like tar. The air thickened with the smell of decay and snow, a paradox that made his stomach twist. Time became meaningless. Hours, seconds, and days collapsed into one endless nightmare. Marcus felt himself unraveling, sanity splintering into shards. Every memory twisted into terror. Every sound became a whisper, every shadow a threat. And then he heard it, a voice softer now, but impossible to ignore. "Say goodbye." The shadows gathered, forming a vague shape, humanoid, yet not human. The taller it became, the more impossible its proportions, the more it radiated hunger, intent, inevitability. Marcus fell to his knees, sobbing, staring into the void where its face should be. He tried to resist. He screamed into the darkness, he cursed, he begged. But the entity was patient, unyielding, inevitable. Every scream echoed back, twisted into mocking laughter. The apartment itself seemed alive, bending and contorting, sealing all exits, swallowing light, consuming warmth. Marcus' mind fractured. He clawed at his eyes, trying to erase what he saw, tried to forget the whispers, the reflections, the impossible forms. But it was too late. The entity had claimed him. His voice was gone, his movements sluggish. He became aware only of the cold presence surrounding him, watching, feeding, enveloping every particle of his being. The Christmas lights blinked once more. Then all was black. From the outside, the building was silent. The snow fell, muffling all sounds. No one passed in the street below. And inside, the apartment, warm and quiet before, now held a new occupant, one who would never again be. Morning arrived, pale and washed out, but it did not bring comfort. The snow outside covered the streets in silent white, but it did not mute the memory of the night's horrors. Marcus was gone. Or at least, the man who had walked into the apartment a few days ago no longer existed. What remained was a husk of fear, a shadow pressed thin, swallowed by something that had claimed him entirely. Neighbors whispered, exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Hargrove avoided the floor, muttering to the mailman about noises, footsteps, and the smell of something unnatural in the hallways. He remembered the warning she had whispered to him years ago. Too late now. The building itself seemed heavier, darker. Even the sunlight that filtered through the snow felt reluctant, as if the world outside had sensed the shift and recoiled. The apartment, once familiar and mundane, bore the marks of its new inhabitant. Furniture remained in impossible angles, shadows stretched across walls unnaturally, and the faint sound of whispering echoed when the hallway was silent. The Christmas tree stood upright again, ornaments gleaming faintly, but if anyone dared look closely, the reflections revealed not the room, but the countless eyes of someone trapped within. Someone who would never leave. A maintenance worker arrived later, checking on the heating system after reports of strange noises. He commented aloud, nervously, on the cold in the apartment despite the heater working. "Feels off," he said, rubbing his arms. He didn't linger. Something in the air, thick, heavy, and almost alive, made him quicken his steps to the door. Time passed in the building. Christmas came and went. Outside, families celebrated, laughter spilling from warm homes. Inside Marcus' apartment, the world had stopped. Clocks spun erratically. Minutes stretched into hours, then into days that felt like years. Yet the entity did not tire. It moved through the apartment with deliberate patience, collecting echoes of the man it had consumed. Occasionally, those who passed the hallway would hear a soft sound, almost human, a sigh, a whispered plea, but when the door opened, nothing remained. Only cold, only shadow, only the silent reminder of what loneliness could invite. Sometimes, late at night, Mrs. Hargrove thought she heard Marcus' voice drifting from behind the walls. Not calling for help, not screaming, but murmuring, subtle, distant, hollow. She swore the words repeated like a chant. "Don't be alone. Don't be alone." The words sank into her chest. She slept with the lights on after that. So did the others. No one dared enter Marcus' apartment alone again. Years later, the legend grew. New tenants whispered about the man who disappeared at Christmas, the apartment that consumed him, the shadows that waited in corners. People avoided the building. When the snow fell, some claimed they could hear faint cries muffled beneath the blanket of white, like the apartment itself was breathing, keeping its prey trapped forever. And then, one particularly cold December night, a curious soul, a man new to the city, fresh from loneliness, carrying a suitcase and a mind heavy with isolation, entered the building. The halls were quiet, too quiet. The air was thick, but the apartment door, Marcus' apartment, stood open as if inviting him in. He paused. The Christmas tree was decorated still, ornaments glinting faintly in the dim light. Then he heard it, the whisper soft and deliberate, curling around his ears. "I've been waiting for you." The man froze, staring at the darkened corners. A shadow moved, a shape, impossible yet tangible, stretching like smoke across the floor. And then the voice came again, closer now, filling his mind. Alone, forever. He didn't run. He couldn't. Something in him, in the quiet corners of his heart, recognized the invitation, the pull, the inevitability. He felt the walls close in, the air thicken. The snow outside continued to fall. Indifferent. The world outside had no part in this. Inside, the shadows gathered. The Christmas lights flickered violently. The ornaments swayed. And in the reflections, eyes, countless, hungry, hollow, blinked back at him. The door shut behind him with a thud. The building returned to its usual stillness, as if nothing had happened. And somewhere, deep inside the apartment, Marcus' voice echoed faintly. "Welcome home." No one ever heard from him again. The legend grew, retold in hushed tones each winter. A warning, a story, a reminder that solitude carries a price. That loneliness is not simply the absence of others. It is an invitation to something waiting, something patient, something that feeds. And so the apartment stands, silent but alive, awaiting the next. The snow continues to fall, covering the streets, muffling the world. But inside, shadows shift. Eyes gleam. Whispers linger. And loneliness, the most human of vulnerabilities, becomes a trap. In the quietest hours, if someone passes the building on a snowy night, they might hear a faint sound. A whisper, almost gentle, calling a name no one dares answer. Alone. 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 And the echo lingers long after the snow melts, long after the lights go out. Because the apartment remembers. It waits. It feeds. Christmas passes again. The world moves on. But inside Marcus, and those who came before, remain. Forgotten yet aware. Trapped yet patient. And the next lonely soul, inevitably, will hear the call. Because solitude is never empty. Not really. And something is always waiting.